This is the second video in this series of AI transformation, by which we just mean behavior change. And I'm going to start with a study where people were given a topic. Let's say the topic was feel better, and they were told to write a rhyme about feeling better. And like most studies, there are multiple conditions. And in this case, there are two conditions. One condition has no constraints. They're saying, write whatever you want. And in the second condition, there are constraints. And in the constraint groups, they are told something like, you must include this word. You must include a specific noun like a mouse. And the question goes is, who is more creative? And if you've ever thought about design or had a design challenge, it's maybe quite intuitive to you, right? We understand intuitively that do anything is actually a really hard challenge, but do this specific thing, now all of a sudden I can start brainstorming more easily. And so that is what happened. In the group that was given very specific constraints about including a word had a higher rate of creativity as measured by the researchers. And so the question you're probably asking is, Kristen, why are we talking about poetry and creativity when it comes to AI? I'll get there. This also holds in the market. And I've talked about this before if you've been following me, but I love the example of Siri and Alexa, where Siri and Alexa, when they launched, had generally the same technical ability. So Alexa was just as good from an AI machine learning perspective as Siri. And yet the reviews of Siri were just very, very bad. The reviews of Siri are still very, very bad. So people did not like Siri and they thought that it was terrible, but technically it's about the same. And so the question is, why? Why was Siri viewed in the market to be so much worse than Alexa when in reality, it just wasn't? And so one theory here, and this is generally an interpretation, is that Siri really was for everything. It had no constraints. It was part of the poetry no constraint group. And it was like, look, it can do anything. And so you do see kind of a long tail of things where it's about searching Google, calling contacts. It was the weather forecast. It was writing emails, read aloud emails. Like it could do anything. And so people did ask it to do a higher variety of tasks versus Alexa, which Alexa basically launched. And I remember making fun of my friends for this, being like, guys, why are you getting a device that just helps you turn on the lights? Like, are you so lazy that you can't turn on the lights? Like, what is going on here? Or the music? My gosh. So it launched and had a pretty constrained use case, which meant that people did ask it to do simple things like turn on the lights, turn on the music. Apparently set a timer was a big one, right? It's pretty limited use cases. And so you can imagine that Alexa could get pretty good at this. Like it could learn, it could improve on these very limited use cases. At the point where we're asking it to do everything, not only do people not know what to use it for, and it may not feel as helpful, but likely there's just higher variance. It may not work as well. So that's a theory kind of, we're saying like, look, constraints help in a design challenge. Constraints help when you're reading poetry and trying to write poetry. It also helps in the market when you're trying to create a new product to give people constraints. And so the theory here is that it is also going to help when you're doing AI transformation in your organization. Instead of saying things like, just use AI as a leader or increase your usage of AI or how have you used AI today? If you constrain the problem and say something like, in a month, I'd like us to make a PRD with one click. Now, all of a sudden, people can get creative about that and really kind of experiment and change within that more narrow work stream. How would you make screenshots editable? How would you remove Figma completely, which is Figma is a design tool. How would you remove Figma completely from our workflow? Is that possible? How would you create synthetic users for research? So these are constrained problems. They're using AI, but they're actually focused kind of in one lane. I really like the example of Cowork here. Cowork is basically a shittier version of Claude Code. Like, what? But it's a wrapper that has a constrained use case more for business folks. So they basically took Claude Code and said, let's make it do less and then have it have an easier wrapper. And by the way, so for the folks who say UI is gone, like actually Cowork is a very nice example of how UI still had this amazing innovation, subtracting things from a product and wrapping it in something that was more consumable than Terminal. Shocker. A really strong impact on the market. You know, when Claude Code and Claude Cowork launched in the desktop version, it really shot up. When Claude Code and Claude Cowork launched in the desktop version, it really shot up. So the second lesson here, remember we had our first video, I'll link to that. Our second lesson here is constrain the thinking. Use AI more is not a great answer. Do more with AI. The board's going to come down and say, why isn't your pricing AI-ified? Why isn't your product AI-ified? How much are your employees using AI? And your job as a leader is to take that larger mandate and transform it into a constrained mandate for yourself or for your team to go and be more creative, have more upside with AI.